movie friends, scary people's friends, horror friends, we're going to be reacting to a video done by, and this is going to be my first reaction of this, guys, but a very popular YouTuber who goes by the name of CZsWorld, and he's done a video on the history of Bathsheba Sherman. And if you don't know who Bathsheba Sherman is the probably the best known, easiest way to actually identify the character or the person is actually the Conjuring, the first Conjuring film that came out in 2013. She was the witch who was possessing the Perrin family farmhouse. But in real life, she was a woman who was acclaimed to be a witch, who was accused of being a witch, and accused of murdering an infant with a sewing needle. She, of course, wasn't found guilty of this, but later died. So, we're going to be diving into this. I'm not sure if this is going to be the history of the character of Bathsheba Sherman or the real Bathsheba Sherman from real life. So I'm not sure how his videos work, but this is a 17-minute long video. So if you guys like this type of content, always be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel, and share the content, of course, and always support the original creator no matter what. This is just a reaction, nothing more. So 3, 2, 1.
In 1812, Ephraim Thayer and Hannah Taft gave birth to a daughter and named her Bathsheba. Born in Rhode Island, Bathsheba would spend her life living in the northeast United States, eventually finding herself in Connecticut, where she would meet a man named Judson Sherman. The two began to date, and on March 10, 1844, they were married, and she moved on to his farm. In 1851, Bathsheba had a son, Herbert Sherman, her only offspring, at least as far as the public record goes. It is believed that she gave birth to an additional 3 children, 2 more boys and a girl, but none of them lived long enough to ever be reflected in census data. Although there were rumors of Bathsheba being involved in witchcraft and ritualistic sacrifices proven, right? After an infant in her care died after supposedly being impaled with a sewing needle, there was never any proof. And it was the 1800s. Modern medical science couldn't be depended upon to save a sick child, so Herbert was her only kin to outlive her. She carried on until 1885 when she went into a bout of paralysis that doctors at the time could not identify and never recovered, dying at the age of 73 years old. We can now infer that this incident was possibly related to a stroke. And that's basically the life of the real Bathsheba Sherman. However, the Conjuring character Bathsheba Sherman met a much darker fate. To learn how additional context of Bathsheba's life shaped the malevolent witch's spirit seen in The Conjuring, and how the character may have influenced later events, stick around to the end of this video.
Okay, what a hell of an opening there, buddy. One hell of an opening. That was really cool.
Welcome to horror history. Most Conjuring movies, as you would expect, deal with the conjuring of demons. Much of the lore is based on the grimoire, The Lesser Key of Solomon, which details evil entities like Malthus and Valak. The demon attached to Isla in The Conjuring 3 similarly has occult origins. There are, however, Conjureverse antagonists who are based more on local urban legends. The second is the legend of La Llorona, a ghost from Latin American folklore. But the original is Bathsheba the Witch, who is based on the mysterious New England farm wife that supposedly haunts the old Arnold estate in Harrisville, Rhode Island. As always in horror history, I'll be analyzing the timeline. But the timeline of the events of the real Bathsheba Sherman don't match up with the timeline of the movie character Bathsheba, who died 7 days after the birth of her child. So I'm going to start with one event that is in both timelines, the marriage of Bathsheba Thayer and Judson Sherman. I'll sort all this out on the other side of the horror history screen.
Yeah, no, it was definitely stuff were added in the movie.
In real life, Bathsheba's marriage came in 1844, when she was 31 or 32 years old. In The Conjuring, Lorraine claims that the farmhouse was built in 1863 by Judson Sherman, and the way she says it makes it seem like Judson was married to Bathsheba at the time it was built. I'm assuming this was very shortly after their marriage. Typically, a couple moves in together immediately after marriage, so I'm just gonna call it the same year. Assuming her major life events came at similar ages, that means movie Bathsheba would have been born in about 1831, married in 1863, and had the baby in 1870, which leaves a pretty big gap between marriage and baby. Lorraine's research mentions that Bathsheba was caught by her husband sacrificing the 7-day-old child, but she never says with certainty that that was her first child. I mentioned the real-life Bathsheba being associated with rumors of other children having died young, and thus being excluded from the public record, and I think the movie leaves open this possibility based on the events that play out. Remember, when Carolyn is possessed by Bathsheba's spirit, she's not just targeting one daughter. She starts by going after the middle girl,
she targets them all,
It's only after that doesn't work that she tries to get April, the youngest. In the movie, Bathsheba's ties to witchcraft are explained by her lineage. It's stated that she's related to Marytown Estey, who was accused of witchcraft and hung during the Salem witch trials. She is also based off of a real person who lived 200 years earlier. The reason for these witch sacrifices, according to Lorraine, all ties into Satanism. They believed that they were elevating their status in the eyes of Satan. After Bathsheba Or can I just nickname her Bath? After Bath was caught sacrificing her baby, she proclaimed her love to Satan and cursed anyone who would try to take her land and hung herself in the tree outside.
What a
but
crazy
as we know,
name,
the
too.
story
It's not a
doesn't
common
end
name.
there. We're given bits and pieces of the hauntings that would occur from that point forward, and if we put them all together, there's a common theme. In the 1930s, a woman named Mrs. Walker lived there with her son Rory. According to the papers, Rory mysteriously disappeared in the woods, but Lorraine's visions tell a different story, where she can be seen stabbing her son in the cellar before taking herself out of the picture as well. However, a sad final outcry helps explain her behavior.
She made me do it.
Made me do it.
Mrs. Walker was possessed to commit her crime by the ghost of Bathsheba. Other ghosts that we've seen in the Conjuring franchise don't have the power to take over somebody's body.
Yeah,
we've seen it many times with demons, but only this once from the ghost of a witch. Since her sacrifice was done in the name of Satan, it seems like Bath has gained some of this demonic power. Her final proclamation in life cursed anyone who would try to take her land. So when the farmhouse was eventually split up into multiple properties, there were even more victims for her to come after, like the Bledsoe boy, who drowned in a pond accident, and the maid in a neighboring home who slit her wrist. The maid's ghost would echo almost the same line as Mrs. Walker.
Look what she made me do. Oh, fuck that. Gets me. You bastard.
While not much is known about
How
this,
dare
there was
you.
also a tragic school bus accident that perhaps took place on the property and claimed the lives of 4 more children. It seems unlikely that there would be a fatal accident in rural Rhode Island, so I imagine the bus driver, like the others, was not in control of his or her own body at the time the so-called accident occurred. There's one constant that runs through most of these tragedies, and it helps explain part of Bathsheba's motivation. Each of these accidents involves the premature passing of a child. It would seem that the witch's undertaking does not expire in death. The only exception to this seems to be the maid, who looks like a young adult, though it's possible that there's another child disappearance that just doesn't come up in the Warrens' research. If each kid sacrificed moves Bathsheba up in Satan's ranks, it's no wonder that there was a huge opportunity in 1971 when the Perrin family, with their 5 daughters, first moved in to the old Arnold estate.
Yep.
Here we are.
Wow.
It
I
was
love the
fall
feel of your videos,
1971 when Roger Perrin purchased the farmhouse in an auction from the bank. However,
Biggest
despite
regret he's
Bathsheba's
ever done.
claim that she would curse anyone who tried to take her land, Roger was not the main object of her wrath. Instead, it was his wife, Carolyn, who suffered the most. After spending the first night there, she awakens with bruises after breaking in the new house with her husband, if you know what I mean. This was a new take on the stories
And
written
that
by
horrible
Andrea
smell.
Perrin about her family's time in the house. In her trilogy of books, House of Darkness, House of Light,
I
she
actually
explains
have
that she feels
the
Bathsheba
first one.
despised Carolyn in particular, because she saw her as essentially taking over the mother figure in the house, and Bath was jealous.
My mother was never allowed to assume her rightful position as mistress of the house. That's the bottom line. Whatever the spirit was that
Yeah, and it was actually trying to show
haunted
dominance
and
by
haunted my mother
flirting and
so
sexually assaulting Roger.
supremely over a decade, was not willing to relinquish the position. She loathed my mother.
No.
She lusted after my father. Lusted. I use that word deliberately.
In the books, Andrea claims that her
Yep.
mother was stabbed in the leg by the spirit with a sewing needle, which is the same weapon supposedly found lodged in the skull of that infant that died under Bathsheba's care. The fictional family also encountered a rancid smell moving around the house, and Bathsheba even went after the family dog. Each paranormal instance would often
Strangled the
begin
dog
at
with the
3:07
leash, yeah.
a.m., the official time of death of Bathsheba Sherman. This would continue onto the second night, where the evil witch pulled on Christine's ankle as she slept to terrorize her. It seems that Bathsheba also has the ability to mess with the TV signal and distracts Roger with a series of 3 knocks that send him
electrical.
searching around the house. There may be more than one meaning here. The activity towards Roger never seems malicious, unlike what happens to his wife and daughters. This could be interpreted as Bath trying to play with him, to kind of assume that matriarchal role. Then there's the fact that the knocking comes in threes, which Ed Warren has his own theory about.
Mock against the Holy Trinity.
Sometimes it's meant as an insult to the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
If she's trying to make a mockery of a religious concept, this may not actually be the first example. Just look at her name, Bathsheba. Bathsheba was the biblical wife of King David in the Torah. I've been calling her Bath this whole time, but maybe I was focusing on the wrong part of her name and should have been calling her Sheba. This in itself could be a mockery of the Queen of Sheba from the Hebrew Bible. And yes, obviously a baby doesn't name itself, as far as I know, but remember, Bathsheba's ties to witchcraft are said to be passed down by her family.
Ed, she's related to Marytown Esty. She's one of the women accused of witchcraft in Salem. She was hung during the trials.
Now, I don't know if Marytown Estee and Bathsheba Sherman were actually related in real life, but
Yeah,
Mary is obviously named after another religious figurehead, the Virgin Mary. And Bathsheba's father, Ephraim, is probably named for Ephraim, the son of Joseph in the Torah. It may not have been the intention of the
Interesting. I never
filmmakers
thought
to
about
call
shit like
attention
that.
to this, but I find it interesting nonetheless. And one
Yeah.
more thing. If Bathsheba was
That is
named after the
interesting.
biblical Bathsheba, that's also significant, because the biblical Bathsheba was also the father of King Solomon.
It's a very distinctive
yes,
name.
the same King Solomon from
surprised
the
if she was
Lesser Key
named
of Solomon,
after that.
the demonic spellbook that was the source of lore for the Conjuring 2 and the Annabelle spin-offs. The last incident to occur on the second night involves Cindy, the second youngest girl, sleepwalking into the wardrobe in Andrea's room.
And then the scariest scene.
I've never seen her do this before.
A lot of Bath's activity is related to this wardrobe, which the family found there upon moving in. The wardrobe is positioned in front of a secret nook behind the wall, where Rory Walker liked to hide when the hauntings got too scary. The area also features a passage down to the cellar, which may have been used for another hanging at some point in the house's history,
yeah.
though we don't have any other details on it. We see Bathsheba use the wardrobe again the next day, when Carolyn is playing hide and clap with the youngest daughter, April. And Bathsheba's hands emerge from it and mislead Carolyn towards that direction, probably hoping to abduct or attack her. It's also on this day when birds start crashing into the
Fucking
house, which might just
freaky.
be another generally creepy thing to happen, or might once again be symbolic of Bathsheba's anti-religious tirade. Since birds
Yeah.
are often used as Christian symbols, like how many churches use dove symbols as a connection to the Holy Spirit. The third night features more ankle pulling. Christine is nearly yanked out of bed and sees Bathsheba standing behind her door, but her sister Nancy is unable to see it.
And so are we. We're always just sitting there thinking about it. Yeah, I don't think you can actually see it. I'm looking, but I can't see none. I'd shit
Nancy
my
is able to
pants.
smell the putrid
I'd
scent
shit.
associated with the witch, though. Yeah, I'm beginning to think that Bath was a bad nickname. It slams
Yeah.
the door shut on them, causing late-night calamity in the house. Roger is gone on a job for the
I'd have
next
screamed.
week, over which time Bathsheba inflicts more bruises on Carolyn, leads her around the house at night using sounds, knocks the family pictures off the wall, which again were insulting to Bathsheba because she's jealous of Carolyn being the mother figure, and eventually slams the cellar door shut in a way that knocks Carolyn down into the basement, where more horror ensues.
God.
Upstairs, Cindy has another sleepwalking incident.
Scariest
but this is
scene in the
probably
movie.
just the ghost of Rory trying to protect her. But in this case, the dark presence of Bathsheba has a counterattack. Andrea is lured back to the wardrobe when the knocking sound continues.
Yeah, Rory trying to get her to go into the hiding spot, probably.
And Cindy
hiding
awakens
in
to
there.
see a sight that no child could ever forget.
No, hell no, I didn't forget it. I shit my pants. I almost threw my popcorn. Her just sitting on top of that wardrobe all freaky. And the fact that she leaps off of it was another level of jumping. Yep.
After more nights of turmoil, Carolyn and Roger enlist the help of renowned paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren on November 1st, 1971. And when Lorraine sees the dark presence latched onto the family, Bathsheba immediately sees her as a threat and begins plotting to how she can ward them off. She lashes
Such a
onto
wicked
Lorraine,
looking-
essentially
the
following her
makeup here
home to see
is
what's
so
important
not
to
talked
her.
about.
And
The
she
makeup
witnesses
for
her
Bathsheba
receiving
was
this
fucking
locket from her
phenomenal.
daughter Judy. The next night, when the Warrens return to the estate, Ed places holy items around the house to try to draw a reaction out of the spirits. There is some activity at 9:18 p.m. in the cellar, and after they investigate it and find nothing, Bathsheba tries to slam the door on Carolyn, but she's able to jump out of the way. The relentless attacks are really starting to get to her, which I imagine is just what Bathsheba planned for.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm exhausted. I'm just gonna take a nap. The late nights they're getting to me.
This leaves her alone and vulnerable, while Lorraine is outside helping with the laundry, and the two make eye contact before Bathsheba attacks Carolyn in her sleep and possesses her body by puking in her mouth. Yeah, if you're not familiar, that's pretty much always how possession is done in the Conjuring movies. When Lorraine makes it upstairs, Carolyn
It's a
acts
very
like she's
odd,
fine.
you
So
know-
this must be Bathsheba manipulating her and trying to hide from Lorraine.
They just
That
try to
night,
copy
there's
what James
another
Wan
sleepwalking
did.
incident, but this time Lorraine finds the area behind the wardrobe, eventually falling down into the basement cellar. But as she tries to escape, she too is attacked by Bathsheba, which if you think about it makes sense. Not only is she trying to help the family, but she's also taken on a supportive motherly role. For example, she was helping out with laundry while Carolyn was trying to rest.
Even threatens her own
Bathsheba
kid.
goes
Yeah,
for her
threatens her
locket,
kid.
the one given to her by Judy, the symbol of their mother-daughter relationship, and basically a threat about who she'll go after if Lorraine and Ed don't back off. It's here that Bath really ups the ante. Holy objects turn face down, and of course, the air-yeeting ensues. The next day, she issues
That's
another
shit.
warning by showing Lorraine a vision of her daughter floating motionless in the river. But since they refuse to back off, Bathsheba decides to make this more than just a threat. Like Christine at the old Arnold estate, Judy is also woken up by a ghostly pulling at her ankle. She gets up and discovers that Bathsheba has actually freed the cursed Annabelle doll from its case and finds the benevolent witch rocking with it in a chair. This is the biggest threat yet, because Bathsheba is not only threatening Judy's safety, but also potentially freeing another powerful entity, Malthus, who is bound to that doll, which is usually sealed inside this case. Nothing more would come of this relationship for almost another year though, as Judy's parents got home just in time to save her, and Annabelle is mysteriously returned to her case. However, that same night, the evil tries to sacrifice another child in Satan's name by using the possessed Carolyn to kidnap Christine and April. Well, I mean, I guess you can't really kidnap your own child, but then again, Carolyn wasn't the one in control. Anyway, her plan was to have the mother sacrifice the child, just as she had with her own child over 100 years before.
Where are we going, Mom?
On a fantastic trip to the Bahamas.
No, they actually go back to the haunted house, believe it or not. When she got home, Drew must have noticed something was wrong and tried to stop her. She took the kids down to the cellar and tried to stab Christine with a pair of scissors. Drew was able to hold her off, and when Ed and Officer Brad Hamilton show up to the scene, it takes all three men to wrestle the scissors out of her hands. They try to carry her out of the house and get her to a church, but this causes bruises to appear all over her body, as they have been since they first arrived there. But also, her skin sears as they try to leave the house.
Burning.
She won't let her leave the house. What do you mean? If we take her out, the witch will kill her.
They end up tying her to a chair to perform the exorcism, and this causes the entire house to shake and birds to crash in from all directions. When Ed commands Bathsheba to reveal herself, it is her face that pokes through the sheet rather than Carolyn's. She levitates off the ground, inverts, and tries to bust through the ceiling, laughing hysterically at their attempts to stop her, claiming that Carolyn is already gone. She breaks free and goes after April with a pair of scissors, so Ed, in one last-ditch effort, calls Bathsheba out by name and attempts to condemn her back to hell. However, I don't think it was this alone that managed to stop her. Even though she had been possessed, the real Carolyn was still down in there somewhere. She recalls a memory of the day that she and Roger went to the beach with their children, and is able to use that love to push back against Bathsheba. In the end, it was her love for family that helped her overcome a witch who used her own family as a sacrifice to the devil, and she's able to spit back out the toxic part of Bathsheba that resided within her. That is the last that the Perron family saw of Bathsheba Sherman, but that does not mean that this entity's story is over quite yet. The spirit was caught in the children's music box somehow, and taken back home with the Warrens to be sealed away in their cursed artifact museum for safety, which all worked out just fine for almost a year. It was September of 1972 when the Warrens were away on a case and hired a babysitter for Judy. The babysitter has a friend over to help celebrate Judy's birthday, and the friend accidentally sets free Malthus, the Annabelle demon, who, as we saw with Judy in November, happens to be a beacon for other spirits, and the house is overrun by many of the ghosts that Ed and Lorraine had locked up over the years. Now, we don't specifically see Bathsheba take on a visible form during this chaos, but we do see this. Roll it.
Really?
Judy is pulled out of bed by the ankle, just as her and Christine Perron had been by Bathsheba the prior year. Could this be an example of Malthus and Bathsheba teaming up against Judy, just as they had in The Conjuring? Or is this simply a case of Malthus having learned from Bathsheba and deciding to take Judy's ankle into its own hands? Either way, it seems like old Bath will never quite be done causing trouble in the human world, whether she materializes in it or not. While we only have these two brief interactions between them, there is a lot more to learn about Malthus,
I never thought about that.
And what makes it one of the most powerful entities in the Conjureverse lore. So click that video on the left to see me analyze the entire history of Malthus. And let me know what other Conjureverse characters you'd like to see covered here on Horror History. Remember to subscribe to CZsWorld for new horrors every week. Ring the death bell for all notifications, and I'll see you in the next one. Assuming we both survive. And you can start by getting that COVID vaccine.
All right, that was The Conjuring, the history of Bathsheba Sherman. Okay, so mostly he hit the history of Bathsheba, didn't really go into the real story of the house, the real stories that the kids actually encountered with Bathsheba Sherman. I actually did a lot of video research after watching The Conjuring back in the day to listen to all of Andrea Perron's interviews and listen to what she had to say about the real stories. And the way that they described Bathsheba Sherman, at least the kids, there was a story actually about the youngest daughter. Carol, something along those lines. The youngest daughter was actually upstairs one day, and she said the entity of Bathsheba Sherman came to her and was saying things along the lines of, "Come with me, my child. I'll be your mother," and kind of trying to lure the daughter away from her mom, trying to lie, be very cunning to the kids. And the daughter ran downstairs, went up to her mom, and said, "She's not my mom. She can't take you from me. I love you. Don't let her take me." And she was referring to Bathsheba, actually trying to lure her in. Yeah, and Bathsheba was described as a really thin, really really thin, just real old, rotted. Her face was described as a beehive. Her arms were like sticks, like twigs, brown black twigs, like sticks, and she would hover above the ground, and she would visit the kids and obviously try to terrify them. But that was how Bathsheba was described in the real sense, as a dark entity. But the movie really did a phenomenal job, obviously, with what they were given. I think they handled Bathsheba in a very scary way. Did they have to use Bathsheba? No, they could have used anything. But Bathsheba Sherman, the name itself, and there was no doubt in my mind that this entity was the one responsible for probably tormenting the family. There's just no doubt about it. Obviously, I don't agree with what these people did to the gravestone, the tombstone of Bathsheba Sherman at the gravesite. Obviously, teens, after watching a Conjuring, went over there, decimated the grave. Andrea Perron came out and was crying, saying, "Why would you do that? Dishonoring the dead." Yes, Bathsheba Sherman did haunt us. Yes, she did do a lot of these horrifying things to our family, but that's no reason to disrespect the dead. And she was right. You don't disrespect the dead no matter what. The dead are at rest. Leave them. They are done. They're no longer among us, so why would you don't disrespect the dead. Have more common sense. But that was very interesting. I really enjoyed that video, man. That was really goddamn good. Thank you so much. Guys, comment down below, let me know your thoughts. What do you guys think of that? Of course, subscribe to his channel, the CZsWorld. Wow, that was entertaining as all heck. Thank you so much. Okay, guys, until the next video, keep it retro, movie friends, and I'll check you guys in the next video. Please take care.